All righty, folks. How are we doing this week? We got another episode of the podcast for you guys. Start kind of dialing this in.
I won't lie. I think maybe keeping the echo on for that intro is the play, Hoppy.
Yeah.
That was pretty baller last week.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wish I would have known about it at the start of the podcast, and then I go back and listen, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, the whole thing, like a half hour of me sounded like I was yelling in a hallway.
At least towards the end when you started playing music in your headphones, that part didn't come through.
Oh, weird.
There's no fear like being half an hour into a podcast and thinking there's a glitch. So,
Well, yeah, we are up bright and early for you guys on Saturday. So we've already had one game of football, if you want to call it football. I actually didn't watch any of the game.
Really?
Yeah, I looked at who it was, San Francisco versus New York, and I wanted nothing to do with that game. I knew it was going to get ugly. My favorite clip that I have seen is the Daniel Jones's face when he's reading the defense, and he just looks completely dumbfounded the entire time. So I don't know. Did you watch any of the game? What were your thoughts on it?
I watched the entire game. I don't regret it because it was the only game on, so it's still worth watching, but definitely not a great experience. Daniel Jones is in for a long season. Unfortunately, he doesn't get to play the Cardinals multiple times a year, so that cake fest is over. Going into the year, you look at the Giants and you're like, all these receivers can do something. None of them are great, but they can all do something. No, it turns out they all suck. None of them can do anything. Wandale got to get out there, which is good to see. He was out and running routes, just a couple of them, but he was out there. But that team without Barkley, they are hopeless. And Waller, who had so much preseason hype, and I bought into it for sure.
Yep,
I got him. He was a top 3 skill player in the last 20 years of Giants, preseason. He was going to blow up, and turns out you still have Daniel Jones throwing the ball, and they signed him a brand new 4-year contract. Oh boy, they're in I was talking to Spitzer earlier this week. Is Daniel Jones the worst quarterback contract in the league right now? Is it Deshaun Watson? Is it both?
Oh man, it's honestly a little tough to call at the moment. It's got to be.
I mean,
he single-handedly won me one of my fantasy leagues last year because he went on an absolute tear at the end of the year fantasy-wise.
Yep.
Rushing all over the place, really earning the nickname Danny Dimes for me, but looks absolutely horrible this year. That team is in complete disarray. I don't know who he's throwing the ball to. No Saquon. He does not look good. He does not look good. And Deshaun also, I don't know who's worse right now.
Meanwhile, the 49ers just steamrolled. They're eternally going to have injury issues. Ayuk missed this week, which is good. He should just take the week off. Don't go get more hurt. He was really banged up last week. Debo, as a guy that owns Ayuk and owns no Debo, when Debo went down, because Debo played lights out, I was like, oh yes, Debo's going to miss this week, and then Ayuk comes back and plays better next week. But he was healthy enough to keep playing. And they have great skill players. They have great offensive coaching. Brock Purdy he's not super talented, but he's good enough to execute the Shanahan offense. And he'll continue to be a solid near 20-point a week guy and just get it done. So,
oh yeah. Well, yeah. Kind of moving on here. I just wanted to say, for anybody else out there in the league right now, if you do want to come on, join the podcast, more than happy to have you on. Let me know. We'll work something out. Just kind of wanted to have an open invite and not let anybody feel like they're being left out in the league. And so feel free to hit me up. Let me know. Mike obviously hit me up this week, said he was interested, and here we are. So I mean, just an open invite for anybody that wants to join.
It's been a little while since I've done one of these podcasts. Back in the old days, me and Krill used to do these, and that kind of fell apart. Hoppy and Vice picked it up and took over. And The production quality is a whole lot better. We didn't have any intro music. We just recorded a Skype call, so it's pretty cool to see where it's coming.
Oh yeah,
look forward to hopefully being more involved with this.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of trades this week.
It's a normal.
And, I mean, what I really like about our league too is there are constantly trades. Like I sent out a message when I got home from work at like probably 12:30, quarter to 1 in the morning, and we're recording at 8 a.m. here. And I was like, trade office is open. I immediately had messages from 2 people in the league about potentially getting a trade done. And unfortunately, it was super late. Nothing did ended up happening from that. But our league is constantly doing trades. And
Pat said he was
Mike, do you know if there's a way to look it up on Sleeper
right?
to see trades, how it happens, or who's done a trade? Mike?
I'm sorry.
Do you know if on Sleeper there's a functionality of being able to see all of the trades, or do we just kind of have to scroll through?
There is. So I was
looking
chat as you were talking. That's probably why I missed your question. I was looking at the PC version, and Sleeper app design, fantastic. PC browser design. So it's harder to see on there, but I'm pulling it up right now on my phone because it is easier.
Yeah, one of the most simple trades here was between Faux Guy, Pat, and Mr. Mike Getty himself here.
This trade is so worthless, but you can tell me your opinion if you want.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you got Marquise Hollywood Brown from Mike, so Pat received him, and for AJ Dillon, Elijah Mitchell, and 20 fab. Honestly, I've not really much to go over on this trade. It was just the first trade that I saw. This happened 13 hours ago, according to Sleeper.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, Mike, were you just trying to unload Hollywood Brown here, or I'm just not a huge fan of AJ Dillon, so I don't see what you were going for. But I guess if he is going to be the lead back in an offense that absolutely needs a running game, that's pretty much the only thing that I see here with AJ Dillon. But tell me what you were thinking.
I got a notification in saying P. Howe guys proposed to trade to you, and that's always exciting when you get to see that. So I pulled it up, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, like I'm not in love with Hollywood. I like him as a flex player, but I'm not in love with him. AJ Dillon, don't really like him that much, to be honest with you. I like Elijah Mitchell. I just missed out on him in the bidding, and he started to get a little more involved this week. I don't think McCaffrey's going to stay to 100 snap share guy. And 20 fab. Oh, well, I'm up to 110 fab now. So
if you want to get a player, you can go get a player.
Yeah, it's my second trade involving fab this year. So and I have some other trades behind the scenes right now that I've been working on this week. And if I do, it's going to result in me having less depth. So I just looked at this trade as it makes my starting lineup worse. I've made a lot of trades this year where I've 2 for 1 and made my depth worse. So I'll do this trade. I'll get guys that as bye weeks start. Like let's go see who's a free agent running back right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's bare bones out there. It's not good.
So Devin Singletary, Deuce Vaughn, Michael Carter. We're down to like third string running backs here. It's not, that's awful. So am I excited about AJ Dillon? No. But I've been trying to trade Hollywood since the draft. And nobody wants him. I tried to trade him to you this week, Hoppy.
Yeah,
you weren't interested.
Without Kyler, that offense is putrid.
Yeah.
I just don't see any viable options other than James Conner. So,
and I think Kyler comes back at some point this year, but it might be late into the season when he does. I don't even know why. I guess the only reason the Cardinals bring him back is so they can try and show that he still has it, so they can trade him. But it wasn't a super sexy trade. I just think overall I'm getting the value with that, so I did it. But let's talk about a more exciting trade. So I was able to pull it up on the mobile app here. Krill had maybe one of the best fantasy days. I mean, we don't need to talk about our dynasty league, but he was executing trades out the wazoo earlier this week. He was able to trade a hodgepodge of scrappy flex players, DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss, George Pickens, and 10 fab bucks to get the one, the only Justin Jefferson. That's a pretty good trade. I mean, that's a prime example of taking advantage of running back issues in the league. Can I execute a trade like that down the road with those same guys that I got for Hollywood? Probably not. But that trade, that's why you keep making trade offers, is to see if you can hit a big one like that. Then we have another one here where Erica got into the mix and made a trade with Pat. This is a pretty even one. Drake London for George Kittle. Pat, after last week's Pat Fryermuth awful experience, was done with him. Literally traded him away for $5 fab this week. First person to do anything. I tried giving Krill 6, but he declined it. But gets rid of, sell highs on Drake London, a touchdown. I'm not excited about either of these guys. They're bigger names than they are production throughout the year, is my guess with Drake London and George Kittle, but pretty even trade there. Are you looking at trades right now?
I'm looking at trade. So I did have a trade this week. I went into the draft, completely changed up my draft strategy this year, to be honest with you. Kind of talked to you a little bit about that before that, where I'm usually I don't go for the big splash with the QBs, but we obviously run the super flex. I hadn't been successful since adding the super flex, and I wanted to see if I could change that method this year. So I went after Josh Allen and Justin Fields, who we all kind of know is just bad at football right now. I don't want to really talk about that.
Oh, we will.
I went and I added another third QB, just to have that added depth, and also ultimately trying to use it as a trade piece later on of, whichever one I don't want or whichever one I think is going to succeed further down the line of, trading one of those guys and getting some more depth, because I was really lacking in wide receivers this year, and a little bit in the running back area, especially losing J.K. Dobbins for the season. So I went and I traded Nick, Matthew Stafford, and David Montgomery to add a little depth to my team. I got Michael Thomas, Samaje Perine, and Javonte Williams, who I have him in another league, and I'm kind of high on him right now. I think they're just that offense is kind of getting more dialed in and stuff. And Nick, unfortunately, lost Aaron Rodgers for the season, so he was down a QB. So it kind of worked out for both parties. Montgomery, unfortunately, hurt at the moment, but I think he will ultimately come back, and this is a big test for Jahmyr Gibbs. If Gibbs doesn't perform, whenever David Montgomery comes back, he's going to be a huge part of that offense. So I ultimately think it was a good move. Now, why Nick didn't add Craig Reynolds as part of this deal, who's going to be starting this week alongside Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm not 100% sure, but that's a question for Nick. Maybe he can answer it next week on the podcast. But again, I think it was a smart move for both teams. Michael Thomas, just kind of more of a role player behind Chris Olave at this point. But really the possession back. Olave is going to be the big play, the down the field throw guy. And Michael Thomas is going to be your he's probably going to get, 7 to 10 yards every catch. And he sees a lot of targets right now. So he's going to be more of a safety net play. Low ceiling, high floor kind of guy, in my opinion. So I needed that extra depth through my wide receivers, and I feel like Javonte has a big upside compared to David Montgomery right now. So I kind of like it for both teams, but I think I did kind of come out on top. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Well, there's a lot to unpack with what you just said right there. The first thing is you were talking about. See, I agree that Javonte has upside, but I guess I disagree on the reason why. So you were saying that the offense is starting to get ramped up. I think the offense has already peaked. Russ isn't going to keep throwing 80-yard Hail Marys every.
Fair. That's
fair. Right. Russell Wilson, bring him out for today. Russ is dog shit. He still sucks. Sean Payton, probably overrated coach. But Javonte should continue to ramp up his involvement and usage this far of the season has been very encouraging coming off the huge injury last year. I thought he wasn't going to be able to be even played this year because he had the J.K. Dobbins like catastrophic injury last year. So to see him out there is very encouraging. To get P. Ryan as just a handcuff in case something goes wrong with that knee is a smart move by you. It's probably this like should have gotten Reynolds, but Nick should have, or because why not? Just take him. But I do see upside with Javonte, not necessarily because of the offense, but just because of his involvement in the passing game and his health. So that makes sense. Stafford is. I traded Stafford to you, and I was trying to potentially trade Carr back to get Stafford this week. I don't even know if you would have entertained that idea, but Stafford has looked very encouraging. We don't know if Cooper Kupp is going to come back. I mean, truly, we don't. Like, yeah, he's out 4 weeks on the pup, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's longer. If he does come back and that team continues to gel with, rising stars of Puka and Kyren, and that Sean McVay offense, Stafford's got a lot of upside. And then the last thing to mention on it, you talked about Gibbs, and Gibbs needs to shine out. We're going to do breakouts and busts in this one. Gibbs, I didn't put him in the bust list, but he's hovering around there, and it's not any fault of his own. Truly, this is not because he's not talented. This is because of the way the team uses him or doesn't use him. The fact that Hoppy is absolutely in love with Craig Reynolds and he picks him up in every league possible. We have another league with 4 bench spots, and Hoppy's like, "Oh my God, drop my team. I have to get Craig Reynolds on this team." You have a love for this guy, and it's
I have a love for Dan Campbell. I have a love for Dan Campbell and what he wants to do with that offense. And right now, it just doesn't seem like Jahmyr Gibbs is part of the main plan. When they've given him the ball, he's been absolutely explosive. But for whatever reason, they stick with Old Reliable and David Montgomery, and they're probably going to do that again this week with Craig Reynolds. And who knows how long David Montgomery is going to be out. Could be 1 week, could be 3 weeks.
Jahmyr Gibbs both weeks has had only 7 carries both weeks. And his snap count went from 27 up to 48%. That's good, I guess. I expect Gibbs to get more involved as the year goes along. I was telling people the only way I see him becoming the lead back is if Montgomery gets hurt, and then Montgomery gets hurt, and people still aren't sure if he's going to be the lead back. I would be surprised to see him have more than, if he doesn't have over 12 carries this week, you will never see him as the premier back on this team. He will be the DeAndre Swift scat back. He'll be a better version of DeAndre Swift maybe. But for people that took him so high in Dynasty too, especially congratulations on getting Darren Sproles on your team. It's unfortunate because he's very talented. They just must not think he can live up to the workload.
Oh yeah. All right. Any other trades you want to mention? But I think I'm good on that.
Only one other one, and that is when this one went through, I was surprised to see it happen. P. Howe guy just sends out trades, and sometimes they just hit. And Bob Jube accepted this one. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Hoppy. Pat got Travis Etienne, and he gave up 1 week flash in a pan, DeAndre Swift and Jameson Williams, currently suspended for gambling. So, I mean, Williams can't come back till week 7. So you got a bench rider for 4 weeks. And even then, when he can come back, the guy was hurt in the preseason. He hasn't played with the team. Last year when he was playing with the team, he was out for very limited snap counts. He had 2 catches, I think. He's super fast, but he's also super irresponsible in the fact that he's suspended from the team. Do you trust this rook to go ahead and be in football ready shape? He could be. I hope he is for his sake, and then Swift for Etienne is just I wouldn't even want to clog the bench spot for 4 weeks for that guy.
Yeah, I really don't know how I feel about this trade. Pat has offered me Jameson Williams a couple different times this year. And I've been interested, but the biggest question, like you said, is he even going to be a contributor until way late in the season? Number one, he's sitting on your bench for 5 more weeks.
Yep.
And then when he comes back, is he just going to be completely integrated into the offense? I think it'll take a couple weeks. And then you're talking about, all right, now it's playoff time. Now is when I really need him to step up. And will he be as involved? I think he needs to be. I think having another target opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be really crucial to that offense's success, and also like Jared Goff's success on top of that.
Yep.
And then ETN, I don't really know what exactly they're doing with ETN, if I'm completely honest. He looked fantastic in the handful of games that we did get to see him flash in last year. But so far, that offense this year hasn't really looked great. So I think there's a lot of questions kind of surrounding, are these guys going to be good? And not necessarily a move that I was willing to make. When Pat was offering me stuff with Jameson, and it just feels like a very neutral trade ultimately, just because there's just too many question marks, I guess.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't feel like it was neutral. I think it was a great trade for Pat, but I'm kind of hot and cold on some of these players. So I agree with you. Jacksonville has not looked good. One of the surprise potential bust guys when I was going through the list was actually Trevor Lawrence. Like, he's been really bad this year. I know this year, it's been 2 weeks, but he's been bad to start. He had a good week against the Colts. Those receivers seem to benefit more than he did from a fantasy production standpoint. And I know he missed a lot of touchdowns with the 1 foot, almost touchdowns against Kansas City. But ETN, so the big question with him and Kenneth Walker is the teams invest in these high rookie talented players. Like Tank Bigsby was a guy I drafted a ton of in best ball. Very excited to see what he could do. And ETN has been the guy. Like, he had an 80% and a 72% snap percentage weeks 1 and week 2. And he got banged up in week 2 and still had that high. Like, he is. And Jacksonville struggled to do anything last week against Kansas City. Kansas City is a good team. Watch out for ETN this week against Houston. Oh my dear Lord. Like,
Yeah,
that is a guy that I want. He is solidified as the one. I do see upside with Jacksonville. I don't think Lawrence is going to suck all year. The skill players are talented. I like that.
Am I reading this right? He was on the injury report for cramps earlier this week.
Yeah. Cramps. Yeah. So it's nothing like super crazy or anything. Meanwhile, Swift, it was the perfect scenario for Swift. No Kenneth Gainwell, and Vikings couldn't stop a nosebleed, so they were just running all over them. And like, Swift looked good. I was not a Swift believer. He looked good, but any running back that touched that ball, minus Rashad Penny, who probably should be a greeter at Walmart at this point, like. Everyone looked good. That Eagles offensive line dominated, but now when Gainwell comes back, I think the best case scenario for Swift is to be a 40 to 50% like snap percentage guy. And he's going to be hard to know if you want to start. And when you trade for a guy like Jameson Williams, you don't want to drop somebody you just traded for. So you're kind of stuck with a roster clog, a less productive player, and you gave up an RB1 on an offense that should be top 10. It just seems like a no-brainer steal of a deal.
All right. Do you want to do busts and breakouts here, or do you want to move right into kind of the fantasy forecast and go over the matchups? What are you thinking?
That's up to you. This is going to be a longer podcast than the last one, which I'm sure is why you're asking this question. So I am curious to at least know who your busts and breakouts are. So maybe we don't need to go in depth about it, but do you want to give me?
Sure. I'll start with my top, my non-secret breakout that I kind of talked to you about last night when we were kind of talking about going over this section, which is going to be Brian Robinson, who we knew that he had the talent, but he was hurt last year after the gunshot wound. Kind of came in. Antonio Gibson was still there, so there was kind of a question mark: is this guy the going to be the lead back? Is he going to be a timeshare between these two? And he completely took over that role. He's the number 3 running back on the year. Had him coming off a monster game against Denver. He's got a couple tough matchups here, and he gets Chicago. He eventually gets the Giants. Gets the Giants twice. Miami later down the season, and it just looks like he's kind of the linchpin in that offense as of right now. Jahan Dotson hasn't quite emerged that we thought he was going to, and they are rocking a rookie quarterback in Sam Howell. So for me, that was my biggest breakout so far this season. Just seeing his emergence, and it's not that he didn't have the potential to be that RB1, but like being one of the top 3, when we're so used to seeing like this list kind of shake out differently. That's definitely my biggest breakout of the year so far.
Honestly, I think it's a great pick. It's not the right. There's an obvious breakout pick that stares everybody in the face, and that's Pookie Bear. That's Puka Nukem. That's Cooper Cup Jr. That he's got great nicknames too. I'm a moron. I got rid of him in Dynasty. I eternally hate myself for that.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Puka's the breakout. He's wide receiver 3 or 4 on half-point PPR scoring right now. Full point, he's probably number 1. So, but Brian Robinson has really he's been great so far. We'll see what happens this week against Buffalo. That's going to be a tougher matchup, but Buffalo has been beat before in the past by running backs, like when JT had 5 or 6 touchdowns a couple years ago. So we'll see. So Puka will be mine. Other notable ones that I'll throw out there is Kyron Williams and Mike Evans. Those guys have really shot. Did you have any other kind of fringe guys?
I really wanted to. I think Jordan Love. There was just so many question marks coming into the season. He's the QB3 on the year, and nobody knew what we were going to get. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a serviceable, maybe kind of low end QB2. And we're in Superflex, so maybe it's valued a little bit differently, but he's thrown 6 touchdowns so far. He's looked like he's making the good reads in the actual games. He just doesn't throw for that many yards yet, and I think that's a factor of nobody on that offense is healthy right now.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is hurt, and Aaron Jones was the bulk reason that he got so many yards in the first game with a 51-yard screen touchdown pass that he hurt himself on. And then obviously Christian Watson's been out with a hamstring injury. Don't know if he's even going to play this week. So I really kind of want to see what's going to happen when those guys get healthy to really make a full thing. That's why I didn't want to make him as my breakout player right away. But that's definitely one. And then,
that the breakout players don't just have to be guys you roster, right? They can be on other.
Yeah, but I don't roster Jordan Love in this league.
I know, but you got a different one.
Has him in this league. I just have him in Dynasty. And the last one, oh my gosh, where did I just had him? Honestly, Calvin Ridley, I thought, but they got to kind of work some stuff out on the offense. Yeah. He looked great in week 1.
Yeah, he did.
Still playing on that rookie contract, baby. 28. But yeah, there was a lot of hype kind of coming into the preseason. I remember that viral video of him running the route and Zay Jones looking like he was moving in slow motion compared to Calvin Ridley. Yeah. But just to see that he still kind of has it, had kind of a rough week last week, but when the offense only puts up 9 points, you're probably going to have those. So if the Jaguars can kind of figure that out, I can see Calvin Ridley really coming out and being one of those top wideouts, maybe a fringe top 10 wide receiver at the end of the year. But again, that's all dependent on Trevor Lawrence and that offense kind of figuring it out. So,
yeah. Who are your busts?
Oh, I think I kind of debated talking about this. Can I say Aaron Rodgers? Can I say that he's a bust?
I mean, you can if you want. I didn't.
So I kind of went back and forth on that last night when I was kind of debating. I asked a couple people at work. I was like, "Hey, who do you think is the biggest bust this year?" And 2 people said Aaron Rodgers. And I can't pick Aaron Rodgers. He didn't play.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, you spent a lot of draft capital to get him. Depending on the league, our league, obviously we do the auction thing. So I don't know how much he went for in our league, but
19.
you used money to get him when you could have used it for other players.
He only went for
Thinking that he
19.
was going to cause Garrett Wilson to really break out as well. And he plays 4 snaps and tears his Achilles. He's out for the year. So it's like you were expecting a lot and you are getting nothing. You got nothing for him. So maybe
Right.
it may be different in a snake draft than our league per se, because if you you didn't have to spend a draft pick necessarily, you're just spending part of your auction money. And I don't think he went for like too much, but
Yeah, if we're going down the like I took injuries off this list because that's not any fault of the player. Rogers
yeah,
went for $19. So I mean that's you'd rather have the $19 back, but I mean the harder thing is spending 19, it's not spending $19, it's thinking you have a quarterback and realizing you don't. That's probably the harder thing.
yeah,
But if we're going to go down the injury list, Cooper Kupp is a bigger bust thus far. Nick Chubb, who I lost $43, is a way bigger bust
yep,
than Aaron Rodgers.
fair enough.
So my list is honestly, I have more busts than I have breakouts, but Jamar Chase was number 1 on my list, and he goes hand in hand with Burrow. Burrow, to this point, well, at least Burrow can hopefully come back and play. And Chase, there's redemption stories with these guys. Early on, you're very disappointed. I think Chase has like 6 fantasy points or 7 fantasy points each of the first 2 weeks, and we're not sure if Burrow's going to play this week. You got some dude named Browning who might be quarterback. Like it's not encouraging. You've got a three-peat or a collection of 3 running backs who just suck, and 2 of them are on the same team now. Alexander Madison and Cam Akers.
Yep,
How about
those
that?
were Madison was definitely one of my top picks too. Just terrible
Yeah,
play. I don't know. Is that the offensive line play? Is it him? Is it not getting enough
maybe both.
touches?
He's getting like all the touches.
He's not
No one
look
else is
good.
touching the ball for Minnesota.
In
So
neutral game script, they are still throwing 70% of the time. So he's not getting the opportunities, number 1. And when he does get the opportunities, he looks bad. He's just
yeah,
running right into the back of his offensive line, it looks like, every play. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing out there, man.
yeah. His only hope was volume, and the volume's going away now. So and then, oh, thank God I got rid of this guy in a different league. But Najee Harris just is fucking garbage. So those are 3 bad. 3 bad running
For
backs.
me, Justin Fields has been a huge
Next on my
disappointment. You
list.
had him on the list. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I was hoping to avoid it.
Until you trade him.
I don't think anybody wants him.
No.
If you want him, hit me up. Hit me up.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that team just has so many things to figure out. I am watching him like sit in the pocket and just not throw the ball. And I'm like, just fucking run. Just run then. Like, that's why you drafted him. You wanted to see him run, and he's sitting in there and not throwing the ball. When he does throw the ball, it looks horrible. It's like Uncle Rico out there throwing the ball. And he's just not running. And that's where he made those fantasy days like worth it at the end, because he'd throw for like 100 yards last year too, but at least he ran for 150 and bust off a 70-yard touchdown at some point. So he was up there. Kenny Pickett, he's looked bad. Like, there was so much hype behind him coming in this season. Is he going to take the step forward? Then you saw him play in preseason and he looked good. And I don't know what happened to preseason Kenny Pickett, because he's gone. That guy left. He got on a bus. He went somewhere else. And that whole offense looks bad. They need help. So he was definitely another one up there for me. And then kind of lastly, to round it out, Jalen Waddle. Just after the season that Jalen Waddle had, that's why I said he's kind of like a fringe guy for me. But I think the expectation was that he was going to have another successful year like he did last year and kind of build on that. And so far, he just hasn't had that. Plus, with the injury again, the concussion, Hasn't met his protection either or projection either week. Wide receiver number 37 on the year. I think we just had higher expectations for him being a top 20 wide receiver, being one of those with the upside of potentially him and Tyreek both being a top 10 wide receiver.
I mean, Waddle's had
Tua threw for 466 yards in week 1.
Yeah, Waddle's had 10
And
points both weeks. Like
he had 78 of those. So
yeah, Waddle's had 10 points both weeks. He's fine. If an owner is viewing him as a bust, which we all know Dave is not, go trade for him because
is he on Dave's team in this league too?
Yeah, he gets him everywhere. So the Fields one is really bad from a career standpoint because that Chicago's a mess. Like they were the worst team last year. They chose not to take a quarterback. This next draft class has tons of good QBs. I would say the odds of Justin Fields being the starting quarterback next year for not only the Bears, but any team to start week 1 is less than 30%.
Oh, wow.
I think he is toast. I don't think he can read a defense. I don't think he can go through his progressions. People nickname him like one read Fields because all he can do is look at the first read and doesn't know what to do. The coaching staff he's made it pretty clear. They're not doing him any favors. I don't know if you saw last week, but they ran. So when they were back up in their own end zone, they ran the same screenplay 3 times in a row. So
I did see that.
They run it and they get like a defensive hold or something. So that moves up. And then they run it and there's an offensive pass interference. And then they run it the 3rd time. And, Levante David on the Bucs is like, we all knew they were running the same play. And it's a pick 6. And what happens after the game? Fields blames the coaching. It's like, dude, you're a quarterback. Audible out of that if you don't like it. Like, it's ugly over there. It's bad. Fields can still, not that I'm trying to pump air into your tires, Hoppy, but he could still have some fantasy relevant games with just rushing upside. But that guy, from a real life football perspective, he's toast. It's bad. And I don't think, and the thing is, if he flames out here, I don't see another team looking like, oh yeah, let's go. It's like Josh Rosen. He could go be a backup somewhere, but he's been awful. And not only has it been awful, he deflects stuff. He blames his teammates and coaching. Like, that's not what you want from a quarterback.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he will be the starting quarterback for the Bears. I do think somebody out there will probably take a chance on him. But again, there are a lot of good quarterbacks coming out next year. Like a lot of good quarterbacks coming out next year. So yeah, there is a chance that he is a backup somewhere. But he could kind of almost be in a Marcus Mariota situation where he kind of is like, he's going to start as a backup, but there's a chance that he starts, So
except Mariota looked better as a starter than Fields did at this point.
Yeah,
so.
Unfortunately.
And that's not saying much.
Fields will be the next Mariota on the next season of quarterbacks.
Oh God, that would be
the bad one. He'll be the bad one on that.
That'd be fantastic. Star casting that becomes the Mariota role. That would be great.
Man. All right, let's move on into the matchups here. I don't know if you pulled up the little docket that I had, just some notes and stuff on that. But I figured we'd start out with our 2 matchups first, and then we just kind of go down the list. Again, I don't know how Sleeper lays them out for anybody else other than myself. So that's kind of what I laid these out as. But the first one here, we'll start with my matchup. It's Too Many Cooks. I'm 0-4 versus Just Win Baby, the Big Catfish, who is 4-0. We actually got a really close projection here. It's 99.37 to 98.00. My biggest takeaway from this matchup here was that there were some key injuries on both teams. A lot more on Big Catfish. He's got Barkley and Cooper Kupp and Bryce Young. They're all hurt. They all will not play this week.
Young might be a blessing in disguise, but
yeah, he has not looked good so far. I think they'll get better, as the season goes on, but he does not look fantastic so far. But then on my side, Zay Jones is out this week again. And I obviously lost J.K. Dobbins for the season, so really trying to fill that hole in. Having Montgomery, who is going to probably not play this week. He hasn't been ruled out officially, but I think he's listed as doubtful. So filling that hole that J.K. Dobbins left is kind of like a big factor for me. But obviously, I traded for Javonte, so hopefully, I think Javonte has a good game against Miami this week, and what are your thoughts on this match here?
I would expect you to win and get off the 0-4 train. I played Eric last week, and his team went nuclear because every team that I've played thus far has gone nuclear. I'm the proud points scored against leader on the season. That's always, fun to hang that trophy somewhere. But his team last week, overproduced. Josh Reynolds had 21 fantasy points. Like, if Krill was telling me he was sad that Mike Evans scored a lot of points. It's like, yeah, but Mike Evans is fantasy relevance. When you have Josh Reynolds scoring, 20 plus fantasy points against you. Hawkinson had 22. He went, the Eagles were just giving up touchdowns to tight ends at the end of the game. He's starting 2 tight ends, 2 bad quarterbacks. His stars are gone. He has Tyreek. And that's it. Like, you shouldn't, if you lose this one, Hoppy, you might as well just stop setting a lineup for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it will not look good. I was talking to Vice about it. I do think I win here. And I just kind of called it. This is going to be our get right week. We're going to win this. We're going to go 2-0. We're going to beat the median, which I expected to beat the median last week and go 1-1, and 1-3 to 0-4 is a pretty substantial thing. Like, you definitely don't want to drop to 0-6. But we had a really high league median last week of like 109.56 or something like that. I thought that was really high for what it normally is.
I beat Donley by 0.04, 1 pass yard. It's as close as it gets.
Yeah, it was tight last week, but I think this kind of just speaks for the competitiveness of our league, is that there are a lot of tight matchups like every single week.
Yeah.
So
the only thing
I do expect me to win. I think, the poor quarterback play. He doesn't have any of his stars right now. And you're not going to be able to expect, 20 points from Josh Reynolds again. No. But, and Tyreek, I do have him in Dynasty. I would like him to do well, but not too well, and he'll be on Patrick Certain. I don't know how to
Certain.
Yeah. But yeah, so he'll be on him, which obviously that's a tough defensive matchup. I mean, Tyreek's Tyreek. He's gonna get his eventually, but and Hawkinson does look good. I do think this is gonna be close, but I do think I kind of pull it out. Hopefully Justin Fields doesn't lay another fucking egg on me. So
we'll see. We'll see.
All right. We'll move on to your matchup here. Booty Cheeks.
Yeah.
Which you're not really Booty Cheeks because you're 2-2 versus Fins for the win, 4-0, silent sweeper, Miss Jackie Getty herself. So we got the inner house matchup here. You're projected 93.04 unless you've put somebody in, and Jackie is projected 95.33. So far projections are a really tight one.
I'm over the player cap right now. I have 1 extra guy on my roster. So I
you're trying to figure out what to do with that? Then. Okay.
So I'm just waiting to see what shakes out with the Saints backfield here, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing for that.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's going to obviously be a factor. This is not the right matchup that I'm looking at here. Where are you? Way down on the bottom. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you went out, you got Lamar. I like it. I think he'll have a good week this week against Indianapolis, especially with but if the game gets away from them just because they don't have Richardson, but Minshew should do fine for the Colts. I think that'll be a tighter game.
Yep.
Miles Sanders, huge volume play. And I like Olave.
Yeah.
But
Keenan.
I think her wide receivers here are slightly, I like the upside a little bit better for her guys. But obviously we saw Darren Waller already played this week. So I think that's one of the reasons that she had a little bit of a low projection. Hopefully he could have gotten into the end zone, but he didn't. Had 7 targets, 3 for 7, 20 yards. That's not what you want out of any of your players. And is Jacoby Myers, did he clear concussion protocol? He did. Yesterday he cleared concussion protocol. So yeah, I like her wide receivers. Depending on what you decide for that flex spot, this is still going to be a pretty tight matchup, I think. I could see
I agree. I think she
I
wins.
could see both hitting the median at the very least, and then I don't know. I think Jackie might have the edge again because I like her wide receiver upside.
I would agree. I guess my plan is just tread water until JT maybe comes back. That's exciting, right? Like lose my week matchup, but get the median. That's what I've done the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If Desmond Ridder outscores Derek Carr, I'll probably cry and I'll have no chance of winning the week. I like my players. Losing Nick Chubb last week really hurts. If I had Chubb in this one.
Oh yeah, if you had Chubb, I don't think we would be talking about it being as close of a matchup at all. So.
Yeah, and Jackie's bench, like Jackie's starting lineup is probably better than mine, and her bench is better. She has she's got a good, solid team. So I think it's either team has a chance. I think she's favored.
Yeah. All right. Next one I got up here. Team Sneaky Nico 0-4, Erica versus Show Me Your TDs. C Sterling. Erica projected a dismal 76.55 versus Show Me Your TDs 105.97. Just to kind of go over Erica's team, she has all of the Bengals, none of which have been any good for her. I can't imagine that will stay that way all season. But there are some question marks with Joe Burrow's. Is it calf?
Yeah.
And then if we go further down, she still has some pieces that she hasn't swapped out yet. Justice Hill is out. Odell Beckham is out. If you want to go even further onto her bench, she's got Kamara that's still suspended. Kyler's on the pump. But I imagine that she will substitute Drake London in. But I don't really know what she does about the Justice Hill situation in the flex. But obviously her projection will go up.
Yeah,
On
I
the other
looked at it.
side,
So Penny gets replaced by Charbonnet, which isn't good, but at least it's a player. Drake London and Mims will come in and fill Beckham and Justice Hills. So her projections go up by 20 to bring her up to 90, 96, if you will.
Okay.
And then the interesting thing is if Joe Burrow doesn't play, Joe Burrow is a Monday night guy.
Oh,
right. Her other quarterbacks are Lawrence, who plays Sunday at noon, and Tannehill, who plays Sunday at noon. So she may have to decide Sunday at noon, Sunday at 11. Am I going to gamble it and hope that Burrow plays? Or am I just going to put in trash ass Ryan Tannehill in hopes that I get 10 points?
I was on the Tannehill train last year. Don't do it. If you can save yourself, don't get on that train. It's a horrible ride.
Against Cleveland too. Like Cleveland's a good team. So
they have a really good defense. So
pro tip, she should move Joe Burrow from the quarterback spot down to the super flex spot to give her a little more flexibility, no pun intended. And then maybe, drop an Odell or a Justice Hill if need be to put a guy there in the flex because you don't want to go. She's 0-4. It's not like she can afford to just take another 0-2 week.
Right.
So it's not good. The team's struggling. It was a really good team that was drafted and has not been a good team. That haven't been
both
good.
Of these teams are 0-4. So they're both in these must-win situations. On the other side here, Jalen's been kind of subpar so far. Fine for fantasy. Had a great week last week against Minnesota, but week 1, 12.5. That's not what you want on a Jalen Hurts. And I just feel like watching him play, he looks slower than he was. Najee has not been good. Jamar Chase on the other side here, not been good. And then additionally, there's no second QB. Which is, something that, if you're new to the league, and you don't really understand the value in the super flex and only do one QB, it's tough. You almost need to have the two QBs. Getting all these updates here on my phone from ESPN, but yeah, you kind of need two QBs to be successful in this league. He doesn't have it, but when Erica swaps in those players, this does get a little bit close, but oh man, I think it's really dependent, like you said, on that Joe Burrow if he's going to play or not.
And if he
Because
can play
that
well,
obviously
not just
increases
play.
increases Erica's T Higgins, increases Jamar Chase. So, but if he doesn't play, I don't know which Bengal is going to be the benefactor of it. Will it be Higgins or Chase or Mixon, or I have
None.
no idea who that will be. Um, I kind of lean more Sterling, I guess, in this one. What are your thoughts?
I guess, yeah. It's not. I don't think either of these teams will hit the median.
Yeah,
I look at this is like the all bust matchup from people on like. There's Lawrence, there's Burrow, there's Najee, there's Chase. Like here they are. We found them, and that's the starting lineups. So yeah, it's not great. It's really like you said. It's really hard to win when you only have one quarterback. Um, someone's got to win. I'm going to say Chad just because I don't know if Burrow's going to play, and I don't know if Erica's going to have. Like, I still don't love dropping anybody on her team.
yeah,
So she's in a tough spot this week. If Burrow plays and he's healthy, then great. She could definitely win too. But I'm going to say Chad gets his first W of the season.
agreed. All right, next matchup, we got Team Nick Sticott 2-2 versus I don't know what's going on, Justin Wald at 2-2.
Battle
Nick
of the
is,
Cheeseheads.
yeah. Nick is projected 96.01, Justin 103.94. I think again the biggest thing here is the injuries on Nick's team. David Montgomery's out, Jamal Williams is out. He lost Rodgers for the season. Brandon Ayuk is out. Deontay Johnson is out. It's big. And why he's projected 7 points lower than Justin right now. But I like Nick's running backs. Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry. Nico Collins has been a stud. I forgot to talk about him in the breakouts.
Yeah.
He's been absolutely amazing, and I think he's going to be solid all year.
I agree.
With Stroud and Houston having to play from behind, and Stroud's shown that he can throw for a lot.
Yep.
Which I'll be completely honest, is a little bit shocking. I did not think he would succeed at this level. And obviously they're losing the game, so in real football terms, he's not. But fantasy terms, he's supporting his wide receivers in a way that is a little bit surprising for me.
Even in real football terms, though, he looks good out there. One guy can't change the entire team. The Texans have a bad team, but they have a brighter future for sure. And Nico was one of those guys that when we were texting yesterday about breakout list, he was on my list in my head. And then when I went to write it down, I forgot about him, like a lot of people do about Nico Collins. But yeah, he's been great. And I think he'll have unless he gets hurt, he'll continue to have a very good year. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think Nick
on
has
Justin's
a better
side,
team here. I think Nick,
on Justin's side over here, I think he's just kind of got some tougher matchups in my opinion this week. James Conner, huge volume play. I like him. I have him in our dynasty league, but he's playing Dallas, so that's going to be a big struggle. Gus Edwards is going to be the lead back here in Baltimore. Will he get it done? Rashad White, he's playing against Philly. That's a tough run defense. Is he going to get it done? DJ Moore is a big question mark in my opinion, just because who he has throwing him the ball. And he on his bench, he does have Christian Watson. And like I'm kind of frustrated with him. I have him on Dynasty, and It's like, is he ever going to play, or is he just going to be perennially injured and like only start 8 games a year? And also Puka questionable on his bench. So is Puka expected to play this week?
I don't think Justin sets his lineup until I think he does some head game stuff here because I bet Puka's in that lineup. I really don't know what's going on with Watson, but if he plays, like I
I
would
think he's out.
start.
I think he's out again this week, personally.
Okay, if either of those guys play, they go in the lineup. Treylon Burks versus Elijah Moore in a Titans Cleveland Browns game. I don't want to start either of those guys. You can start them. They're talented individuals, but yeah, I don't know. And it's tough with Nick too, with all those injuries, like you mentioned. Tank
Yeah.
Bigsby is the guy that needs to go in for Montgomery, I suppose, unless he picks up somebody else that he likes more. Tank Bigsby didn't even touch the ball last week, but
Yeah,
this
I
week
don't know what happened with that.
they play Houston, so maybe Jacksonville's up by enough that Tank gets involved. I don't know. I mean, it's about as good of a week as it could be for Tank.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean, he did fall into the end zone in week 1 against Indy on his 7 attempts. He only had 13 yards, and he did have a fumble. So that obviously can set you back with the coaches. They don't like to see that at all, especially from a rookie. So
yeah,
I still probably give it to Justin. There's question marks, but at least he's rostering a fully healthy team, and doesn't have to rely on some kind of plug and play bench players to come in. So
honestly, I think choosing Justin to win is the correct pick. With that being said, I will choose Nick to win, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's because I looked at the team and I was like, I like the upside of some of his players more than the upside of some of Justin's. I think I'm underrating Justin's
Justin's just got
team.
the tough matchups this week. So
Yeah, and he hasn't set his lineup correctly. So I think that team, hey, maybe when the waivers run here at 10, he won't be able to get to the 56-minute point of this podcast by then. But Justin, you should drop Ahmed. He doesn't belong on this team at all. Go get another, bench guy that Nick can't then start. So,
all right, Mike. This next one here, I specifically wrote in the notes. I will not introduce this one. So
okay. So it's Ben Howard versus David Getty. Full names out on display. You want their phone number, email, social. Message me after. Leave it in the comments, and we'll put it there for you. Yeah, this is a matchup. That's my analysis.
that's what you're gonna say. Well, yeah. Okay. So Dave's team, the Specially Special, there is 4-0.
Dave's gonna
Unfortunately,
steamroll Ben. Ben's team. Look at this
yeah.
dog shit team. So you got Daniel Jones. Couldn't even get to 4 points. That makes me, as a Derek Carr owner, I feel proud looking at Daniel Jones' stat line right here.
Yeah, I wrote that in the notes too. I said Danny Dimes fucking sucked.
Yeah.
um,
Not that we would have had much of a different take had we seen this before the Thursday night game, but looking at this Saturday morning gives me even better confidence on the anti-Daniel Jones pick this week.
Yeah. Is Gibbs the guy? This is kind of his week to prove it. And maybe get a little bit more of that timeshare when Montgomery inevitably comes back.
Zach Moss,
here?
tough matchup.
Mayfield over Garoppolo because he has Garoppolo on his bench. Is that what I'm seeing here? Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd start Baker over Garoppolo at this point.
It's just Philly's a tough matchup, is all, and it's a Monday night game.
Yeah, it's bad. Delvin Cook.
Yeah, and then Cam Akers went to Minnesota, so that'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. But yeah, if you look over at Dave's team, I said Kirk has been balling out. Waddle's in concussion protocol. Alexander Madison, as we talked about him earlier, is one of the bigger busts this year. But Purdy is a dog, it looks like. He put up 20.3 points, throwing for 310 yards. Granted, it was against the Giants. So, but he's looked solid so far. He got his 2 touchdowns per usual. And my biggest question here was, is Josh Jacobs just bad now? Like, what happened?
I think he'll have a good week, Josh
Yeah,
Jacobs.
I
But
hope so. I mean, I've never seen somebody with the star power like Jacobs rush for negative yards.
I think it's the
That,
first time a rushing champ has had negative yards in a
yeah,
game.
that kind of blew my mind. He's obviously got Kyron as well. So, yeah, I think we can kind of move on from this matchup. I
Yep.
think Dave's team absolutely rolls over Ben's team right now. There's just too much going on.
Yeah. Better luck next year, Ben. Maybe season 3 will be it for you. This year's over.
Yeah.
It's done. This team really needed Aaron Rodgers, and they don't have Rodgers, but they have Garrett Wilson and Dalvin Cook, and Zach Ertz might be their best play of the week, and that's really gross. So
All right. Next matchup we got here. Don 2-2 versus Doug Dimmadome. Briggs himself 4-0. Don has projected a huge 120.46. Dimmadome 108.86. And I think, Don's obviously projected this high because Debo hit way over his projection. Had a fantastic Thursday night game. Six receptions on 12 targets, 129 yards, and did get into the end zone. Mahomes is playing Chicago. Will Kareem Hunt kind of get involved? That's kind of like my big question on Don's team.
probably not.
But Briggs, Christian McCaffrey, once again, 18 for 85, a touchdown, 5 catches, 34 yards. That's like the floor for McCaffrey, I feel like, every week. He's going to get a touchdown. He's been a touchdown in 12 straight games. He's going to get a bunch of targets. Whether he gets that touchdown receiving or rushing, he's like almost guaranteed to get it. I saw somebody say that if you were to put $100 and then just kept rolling it over for this streak of all of your winnings into the next bet, you would have won like $75,000 on McCaffrey anytime touchdown for the last 12 weeks.
Wow. That's pretty
So
crazy.
he's money. And I think one of the biggest question marks here is a lot of questionable players. Aaron Jones was back at practice, but does he play? DK still on the injury report with the rib injury. And then DeAndre Hopkins, who first of all has been a shell of himself and also on the injury report. So Hopkins has got a moderately tough matchup here against Cleveland. He's got a bum ankle.
Don
Um,
Don has his own injury issues though too, like Amon-Ra with turf toe, and the steel boot, and Pacheco has got a hamstring. He was at practice, so
yeah.
And the other issue too, if you look at this, I think this could be a coin flip matchup. I'm not sold like Don has the better team on paper, but like Kareem Hunt could be a 0 or close to 0. I don't know how heavily involved he could get in the end zone. That's your best case, but
Right.
And then he's got some matchups here where like do Mahomes and the Chiefs just steamroll Chicago to the point that it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire handoffs into the third and fourth quarter, and that's not
Yeah,
point
I was
any
kind of
guy.
thinking that could very well be the game script.
CeeDee Lamb against Arizona, they may not need CeeDee Lamb. Amon-Ra injured, or coming off injury. Christian Kirk against Houston. So you have, is Zay Jones going to miss this week? I think he is. So that's better. But Houston, because you can run so much on Houston, you don't need to throw on them. So I'm just not sold with this. I'll take the under on Don getting to 120. I don't think
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like a really high projection. But again, I think that's, if Debo just hits his normal projection, which is 8 points less, now we're talking his projection's 112, which I feel like is a more reasonable projection of probably where he'll be. Low
also,
100 teens to upper hundreds.
I
And
would
so I do
start
think this is going to be a
Stroud.
close matchup. If Aaron Jones plays, I think honestly, I kind of give the edge. Yeah, I kind of give the edge to Doug Dimmadome here in
Sure.
Adam Briggs. Just because like what you just said there, and it kind of changed my mind. I thought I was gonna give it to Don initially. But those game scripts where Don's team could just be out way ahead
Yep.
and they just won't need to throw the ball anymore. And then I think that as long as everybody plays on Briggs's team, they're going to be solid. Jordan Love, though, unfortunately, bad matchup. I am a little worried about this week for Jordan Love. So, especially
Yeah, I
with
was
no
just gonna
Chris
say
Watson playing.
I think I would start Stroud over Love, which is crazy as the breakout player and quarterback 3, Jordan Love. And he's getting some of his guys back potentially, which does make me feel a little more confident. But
Yeah.
I think I might start
Yeah,
Stroud
I
over.
honestly probably this week specifically, I would do that.
Yeah.
Jaguars, again, he'll probably have to, Stroud threw for 242 for week 1, 384 last week. Now, I don't know if he'll throw for 384 this week, but probably somewhere in between those two, probably close to 300 yards. Because if they want to stay in the game, he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. So,
Yeah.
did he really have? He's had 3 fumbles, 2 of which have been lost so far in the season. Wow, I did not know that. But yeah, like I said, I think with what you talked about, I give the edge over to Doug Dimmadome here in Adam Briggs.
Yeah, I think both teams are trash. I'll go with Briggs to win because there's nothing that brings me more joy than picking against Donley. So we'll
Oh,
go Briggs.
absolutely. All right, this is the last matchup here. We have Mr. Pokeballers himself, Astronaut TV versus Gritty Monster, Faux Guy, Pat Howard. 1-3 matchup versus 2-2. I've said this last week in the podcast. I really like Kirill's team. Very much has underperformed so far, and obviously Kenny Pickett I did pick as one of my busts, which is unfortunate because I actually like Kenny Pickett, and but if Richardson plays in this game, I think there's not even like a question that Kirill wins, that Astronaut TV wins.
Richardson's
But
already ruled out. He's not
yeah,
playing.
I know. That's what I was saying. If he
Oh,
if he
okay,
were
okay,
to
okay.
have played, then I would think that he would win.
Gotcha.
He played what? He was on pace last week before he went out for 80 points.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's unrealistic. No one was expecting him to get there, but 2 rushing touchdowns in the first quarter was like, oh yeah, this is the dude.
He'll get to
Just a
60.
little whiplash causing that concussion on that second one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I like Bijan. I like Pittman. I think he'll actually do really well this week with Minshew in there. Sam Laporta has been heavily involved, getting a lot of targets, getting a lot of catches there. Justin Jefferson, James Cook looks like he's going to be pretty solid this year. 17 for 123 last week against Vegas. So I give the edge over to Kirill, even though he is projected lower. But I just think he's got some dogs on his team, personally.
Yeah. Both teams are interesting. I mean, anytime you can trade scraps and get Justin Jefferson, that's going to help the lineup.
Yeah.
No doubt. James Cook is allergic to touchdowns, but loves yards. Bijan is super, super, super talented, but the coach still wants to give a lot of carries to Algier. Pickett sucks. Pittman's been great. McLaurin is kind of underperformed, but he's a good player. Laporta has got a great opportunity this week. Roshan shouldn't be starting in lineups yet. The hope here, I guess, is that Chicago gets down so much that they start doing dump downs to Roshan because he's had 5 carries and 4 carries. Like, he looks good, but he's not involved enough yet.
Yeah, Herbert's still the starter. But Roshan is gonna, I think, just get work in more and more and more.
And if you want like all rookie busts, A-Chain and Quentin Johnson should be right on that list, and that's on his bench.
Yep.
I actually think Pat has a little more of a solid. Do I? I mean, Dak Dak could be a game script issue. ETN, I think, will have a huge week. Kenneth Walker should have a huge week. Antonio Brown, he is son of a bitch. AJ Brown, I think will have a great week because squeaky wheel. Devontae Adams, sure. Pickens,
Yeah,
sure.
Pickens is fine. Yeah,
it's Pat with the dub.
You think Pat gets it done with the dub here?
Correct.
I just for me on Pat's team,
both these teams could beat the median. I don't think this will be low scoring. I think this will be a good matchup.
Yeah, I think this will be a good matchup too. I think my biggest question mark on Pat's team is Mac Jones against the Jets. He's not protected a whole lot, but that could go south really quick. The Patriots just have not looked good. I mean, I guess they look good against Philly. Like, in all intents and purposes, I thought that they kind of won that game. But last week against Miami, I didn't think they looked all that great. And we'll see against the Jets. That'll be a tough divisional matchup. So that's kind of why I kind of get the edge over. But Pickett's just dog water. Sorry, Kirill. You got to get a new QB. Try trading with somebody.
You don't want
Not me. I don't want him
this week.
But yeah, I do think this is going to be a high scoring game. I could definitely see them both hitting their projections and getting a little bit higher, and both hitting the median for sure.
Yep. Good matchup. Should be fun to see what happens.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that just about does it for the podcast. Mike, you got anything else to add here?
No, we've talked for a long time. I think I don't have anything else to say at this point. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks again for tuning in. I can't hear any outro music, but I hope you guys hear some outro music. We will be back next week. Again, if you want to get in on the podcast, just hit me up and we'll figure something out. So other than that, you guys have a good week. We'll see you next week. Good luck with your matchups.
That's right, baby.